Last Monday was a leap day, and I spent most of the day trying to think about something smart, maybe a little bold, maybe a little different to talk about. You know, and I'll tell you, I got nothing, because I've already heard almost everything that I thought I was going to talk about. So, I gave it away. Well, I'll go ahead and jump there. So this is about 5 things. So I was thinking about a leap day 16 years ago. It was a pretty important day. The team I worked with had done a lot of work. We'd built a pretty good business plan. We'd interviewed almost every company in the corporate travel 100. We had 3 major airlines in our fold, and we were pretty confident we were right. So why was it so important? There was a board meeting that day, and we were asking for $1.5 billion to start a company. So I was going to ask you if you knew what company it was. There it is. We were going to do things that people didn't think could be done. We were going to put broadband, high-speed internet into airplanes for passengers. And we thought that was pretty cool. Unfortunately, I guess, well, maybe I should say, for Boeing, it was going to be really cool. Because 1, they made airplanes, and 2, they had close ties with the airlines, and they launched satellites, and they built satellites. And about a month earlier, they had bought Hughes Space and Communications. And the whole idea was to drive the market, drive experience, drive value, and drive the ability to build more satellites and more satellite launches. So it really didn't have anything to do about internet. It had to do with satellites. And I really remember a couple of these companies in the corporate travel 100 had said to us, we don't care what you charge, because our associates fly on these airplanes and we can't bill their time because we can't prove they're working. But if you can show us that they were working, their time's billable. And we'll actually pay for the internet access too. But we really want to bill for their time. So that really kind of let us understand that this was going to be a great business, right? No. We weren't even smart enough to know that it was satellite broadband. We thought it was high-speed internet, right? On the positive side, there was, I think, one big change that came out of this. And this was really the first time that fixed satellite services were used for mobility. And it sort of entered a new era for those. So, not sure connection would have survived even if 9/11 had changed the airline industry. And the reason was there really wasn't a lot of capacity for the market in those days. And more importantly, there wasn't sufficient capacity economics to support broadband if the demand really grew high. So we think capacity economics are like one of the big problems. And if you're going to connect the unconnected, you have to develop an understanding that this is an economic problem. It's not a satellite problem. It's not a launch problem. It's a total economic problem. You have to have enough data and speed to serve the market today. But then you have to have even more data and speed to serve the market tomorrow when those same customers are going to want to use more bandwidth. So, I think this is a really cool time. Everybody, just about everybody in our industry is trying to do this. Some at LEO or MEO, some at GEO, some with UAVs and some with balloons. We have direct-to-home providers that have independent studies that show that they deliver their promised speeds even in the busy hours. They have studies that show they actually do it better than terrestrial providers in some cases. We have people who are blending broadcast and broadband. We have people who are focusing only on broadband. We have people trying to be global providers first. We have people who are trying to be regional providers and extending themselves into global providers. So I think what's really cool about all that, these are our market trends. These trends are like less than a decade. And the learning that we're going to have in the next decade is even going to be greater. This is just the start. So when you think about the future, you have to develop theories of the future because you can't look at the data because that just kind of reflects the past. Now, I borrowed that thought. It's not original to me. That comes from Clayton Christensen, who wrote Innovator's Dilemma. He actually wrote a series of books that talk about how the values in the industry can change over time, and that continued business success requires us to realize those changes and actually make adjustments in those. So in this industry, it's sort of at infancy. We are generating new markets. We're actually generating new revenue. We actually have to be very careful because when we walk out these doors, our market analysts, and there might be some in the room here now, will tell us this is all about reducing the price of a bit or creating, basically pricing wars. This has nothing to do with that. I mean, speed, volume, quality, those are really important. But this is understanding that broadband is going to be used for new applications, and it's understanding how that's going to be used that's important. So, kind of when you hear this, when you see another one of these things saying, oh man, there's pricing pressure. No, there wasn't a consumer market 5 years ago. That's new market, new money. And it's realizing that you can do something with these satellites that couldn't be done before. So when you think of satellite communication in the past, you can sort of focus in on media distribution or broadcast, but you don't even have to go very far to remember that it used to be telephony. So it changed once, and it's changing again to broadband, which is, we think, a pretty good thing. And the purpose of that focus now needs to be on in fact, what it does. So this is actually there's a very simple parallel to what took place in the terrestrial industry. It wasn't very long ago, the terrestrial industry was broadcast, and it evolved to unicast and internet. Essentially, that's the same thing that's taking place in the satellite industry. If we're going to provide broadband from space, we have to transform the way we build our satellites. We have to reinvent ourselves from single beam satellites to dozen beam satellites to 1,000 beam satellites to thousands and thousands, because we need to have a tremendous amount of frequency reuse to serve the market. So imagine just what you've heard in announcements in the last few months, multiple constellations, multiple companies with terabit satellites, or what some people have called a mystic beast. I think I actually like that name. But that's where our industry is today. And it's also moving beyond that, moving to highly resilient, highly adaptive, secure networks that actually can provide the communication in a more assured manner, whether it's to consumers or enterprises or governments. Also, the ability to have much better network visibility that's allowing us to protect our network and also protect our customers. So, let me get to the 5 things. First one, getting satellite broadband from a satellite broadband provider at terrestrial speeds and terrestrial prices without a data cap. That's going to be a big one. Getting more bandwidth from your satellite broadband provider next year without having to pay more for it. That's the only way to stay pertinent. Live sport streaming, Amazon, could be Hulu, any of those on an airplane, and getting it for free. And finally, just thinking that satellite broadband doesn't suck. So I just want to borrow one more thing, and I'm re-borrowing it because we've already talked about this morning. When we think about the future, and really I think that's why every one of us is here today, it's not the things we don't know that are going to bother us over time. It's the things we think we know that aren't so. And I kind of tie that back to connection. We thought we knew slow internet on an airplane to 1 or 2 users was going to be really good. Boy, was that wrong. Thank you.